Welcome to Shading Forms with Mrs. Castillo. Today we're going to be focusing on the cube. Just a side note, we are using the blending technique only. So any rules I discuss are for the blending technique. First thing to remember, we should be using circular motions, not lines back and forth. Second thing to remember, we should never, ever blend with our finger. What happens is we have oil on our skin that can get on the paper, as well as whenever you try to blend with your finger, it leaves a kind of dirty, smudgy look rather than using a tool or your pencil, and it is not very precise because it's your finger. So avoid that at all costs. Now we're going to start by drawing our cube. Now just in case you don't know how to draw one, you start with your regular square, or if you were doing a rectangular prism, rectangle, and you draw another square that exact same size kind of up in the corner, and you can go left with this, right or bottom left. I went top right, and then you connect the corners that you want to be visible and erase the rest of the lines. And now you've got your cube. I want you to notice how every single line that's opposite of each other is parallel. Parallel means if they were to keep going, they would never touch. So you can always check your lines and make sure they're parallel to make sure you have a correct cube or rectangular prism. Now, the very most important thing whenever you're shading any kind of form is that you are recognizing your light source. Where is the light coming from? So I'm just going to draw mine in here so that you can visualize it's coming from the top right. So that means that my light is shining, kind of hitting on mainly on the right side will be my brightest side, and the top will be kind of my medium shade, and my front side here is getting the least light, so it's going to be the darkest. So remember, we're using our circular motions to go ahead and shade, and you can shade that in now because that's going to be our darkest side. Now I'm going to add in my kind of middle tone, my middle value up on the top side, and the lightest value, the lightest shade on the right side where most of the light is hitting. Next we're going to add in our cast shadow. Cast shadow is the shadow that comes off of the object based on where the light is hitting it. So we see this kind of right edge of the front facing square is where our first line would be from the light, and then the top of the square, and then kind of that back left line. And don't worry if you don't get this right perfectly from the start. It takes a lot of practice to imagine where those light rays would be hitting and what would be blocked. But whenever you do start shading, the part that is directly under the form, where it's sitting on the surface, is going to be the absolute darkest. And then it's going to get lighter from there as you go out away from the object. Because again, we've got different light sources, different reflected light depending what's in the scene that you don't always see. But that should be the very darkest right at the base of whatever form you are drawing the cast shadow for. Let's talk about the cast shadow a little bit more here, because I'm going to come in and change it for a specific reason. So let's look at the darkest square here where there's no light at all hitting. So we know that there's going to be the very far right edge, there should be a shadow for, which we have, and the top edge, which we have, and then if we go to the middle tone square, that top left edge should have a shadow as well. And then the one we can't see, that's the one I left out. You can imagine directly opposite of us that edge that we had to erase out the line of because we can't see it. That's the one that is also blocking some of the light, so we need to have a line in our cast shadow for that one. The very last thing we're going to do is come in and add some reflective light. So think about anywhere the light is hitting, the light rays come and they bounce off that surface. So we've got the edges of the cubes that they're bouncing off of, the surface that the form is sitting on top of that it bounces off of, which is what we're taking into consideration here. And then if there's anything else in the scene, light will reflect off of that too, depending on the color and the shape or form of that particular object. So here I'm going to lighten up a little bit, as if there's some light reflecting off the white surface that our form's sitting on. Lighten up a little bit on our darkest side. And it's not a big highlight, it's just a slight reflection. We also need to account for this reflection in our cast shadow. So you want to go ahead and add just again a little lightening up of where that reflection would be. Again, because those light rays are going to bounce off of anything that it can, and doesn't just bounce once. So again, not a strong highlight, but a little bit of a lighter spot there. I'm just coming in here, cleaning up some of my edges, making sure they're nice and straight since this is a cube. And there you have it. That is how you shade a cube as a form, taking the light into consideration.